You've said Ireland has an unusual relationship with nature, and our disconnection from the land mirrors our disconnection from the language. What does that mean?
It means we're complex people with a complex history. And our relationship with the language is a difficult one. Mirrors our history. We're both colonized people and colonizers. And our relationship with the English language as well as the Irish language is what makes us who we are today, but is also reflected in the landscape. How the landscape has been changed over time, deforested, exploited by people, different types of people, different cultures that have come to this island. And really that relationship with Irish, that was the language here for thousands of years, that had a deep-seated, I suppose, connection with nature, and the language developed with the nature on the island. And then English has been superimposed on the island with its people in more recent times. And talking 300 or 400 years is quite recent when you deal with nature, because there's no new habitats or species. I mean, these things, everything has been here a very long time. And humans are, our influence on that is quite recent. So it's difficult to kind of articulate, but it's interesting how the Irish language often shows you a reflection of what was there in the past. And a lot of these kind of nuggets of information is held in the language from the past. So something very simple is the name of the national park where I work is Glenveagh, Glen of the Birches. Now, if I brought a bunch of tourists and they get off the bus and they're in the middle of the valley and they look around, and the name of the park was Valley of the Birches National Park, the first question they'd ask is, where's all the birch trees? But they're standing in the national park and it's called Glenveagh or Glenveagh. They don't have a clue. Nobody is thinking about that, because there's a disconnect from what the meaning of the language is and what we hear and what we see today. I suppose that's just a very simple reflection of our disconnect from the language, and then also a disconnect from the history of the landscape.
Okay. Thank you. So we'll get into that. I'm just going to give you a small intro here, all right?
Yeah.
So, Emmett Johnston, you're a professional ecologist, conservation voice, and manager of Glenveagh National Park, Donegal, which is one of Ireland's 6 national parks. You have more than 25 years' experience in nature conservation and environmental management. You're committed to protecting biodiversity, working across sectors and disciplines, and taking a practical, solutions-driven approach to vulnerable species and habitats. You're also a co-founder of the Irish Basking Shark Group. Your story stretches from growing up in Dublin to working with wildlife in Donegal, and a journey that seems to have shaped the way that you think, not just about ecology, but about people, place, and what it really means to live in relationship with nature. You've also played an important role in progressing the conversation in Ireland through your formal roles over the years, your academic work, including scientific papers, a master's and a PhD, and through community service like your involvement with the RNLA. Alongside that, you're also a husband and father of 3. So welcome, Emmett. Pleasure to have you today.
Thanks, Ryan. Great to be with you.
Good.
I'd like to meet that guy.
So, one of the things that struck me whenever I did connect with you was about your, I suppose, your love, I would say, and respect for nature. And I just wanted to start by sharing a little bit about where that came from me, and then to hear about yours, because I think everybody has a different relationship with nature, and maybe there's different times in their lives where, something happened, So for me, I've done psychedelics and I was very skeptical. And nature was just an object. I just saw it as something that was there, outside of us. And on one of my experiences, I met this female spirit who I was told about before it happened, but I was just like, hardly a spirit that you can talk to. And it happened, and she came to me, and I was very skeptical still, and I asked her, if you're real, show me something. She opened up like a little circle, and I saw colors that I've never saw before. And then from that moment, I was like, holy shit, there's something greater here. But that was Gaia. It was Mother Earth. It was a female spirit, a very powerful spirit. It just felt very, very like I could feel it, you know, and it was strong. But ever since that happened, I was like, shit, holy shit, I realized that I was so fucking shitty in terms of like thinking about the land, thinking about nature, and like throwing, like, I would have been throwing rubbish out as, like, you know what I mean? Like things that I'm not proud of, you know, but it changed that. So what was it for you that changed your perspective, or was it something that you've always had?
Yeah, I admire your confidence to speak openly about that. Not many in the Western sphere are happy to talk about nature as a living entity, you know, and that kind of a psychedelics and having an experience is part of many First Nations cultures, as initiation rites and things like that. And their relationship with nature is one of like being family members. Our relationship with nature is often dominated by a kind of a hard scientific perspective, which is, you know, it gives us some insight and learning, but is also quite restrictive. But my experience at nature, I grew up in Dublin in Bayside. It's kind of a sandwich between Sutton, which was a kind of middle class area, and Kilbarrack and Baldoyle, which were a bit more blue collar working class areas. And I had the seafront, which is Dublin Bay, right on my doorstep, and I hated concrete. Didn't like growing. We played football, played soccer, played rugby, played Gaelic, played lots of sports, but loved to get away, walk the dog, and that was my escape. Was up to Howth or out to Bull Island, which I know now is a bird reserve, but when I was a youngster, I didn't realise. I just thought it was a place I could go and get away from it all. You know, there was a lot of tension in the house when I was growing up, so it was good to be out of the house as opposed to in the house. And I suppose my association with nature was a place you could be free, just be yourself. When I got a little bit older, I just had these notions of going to North America, to the Rockies, to the mountains, big mountains. And we were going to move to Canada. So interesting story how I ended up where I am. When we were going to move to Canada, my parents went over to Canada to buy a house one summer, and they left me and my sisters in the house alone with a limited amount of money. And we partied it all away in the first week. We had a great time, but I ran out of money, and I had heard from my brother about this volunteering you could do in national parks, go and do volunteer work, and they give you your food and board. So I got in touch with this crowd. They're called Groundwork in Dublin, and they said, yeah, we got 3 weeks down in Killarney National Park. So lied about my age. I was only about 14 or 15. You're meant to be 18. Said, oh yeah, I'm 18, no problem. I was big enough at the time, get away with it. Went down there, hitched down to Killarney. Did 3 weeks volunteering in the national park there, just digging up rhododendron bushes and these kind of non-native plants. And I had the time of my life. It was brilliant. Loads of international people. I met some friends from Spain who I'm still some of my best friends. And the guy who was leading the group, a guy called Chris Barron, I never forget, we were sitting having our lunch on the side of a hill, and I said, you get paid to do this? And he said, yeah. I want that job. How'd you get that job? So he told me how he did it, and I thought, yeah, wow, I'd really like to do that. So I had that in me from a young teenager, but years later you kind of progress.
Was that because, did you have an association with relationship, or was it an escape that you kind of felt like it was a safe space?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it was a bit of both, but it was a place you could just you know, forget about. People for me were trouble and problems and arguments and fighting, and there was always hassles, and I just thought I loved to just get away from it, and being in nature was peace, you know, and just peaceful, and yeah, I just felt at home there, and more, I felt myself more relaxed. Whether it was on the coast or up in Howth, there was kind of these big areas of rhododendrons. You could kind of...
Big areas of what?
Rhododendrons, these big plants up the back of Howth Castle in North Dublin. And we used to hang out there, and it was just, I really, really enjoyed it. My time as a teenager in those places, but I didn't really enjoy my time when I was back in the kind of the mix of suburban life.
Because I assume that there's a lot going on there, there are a lot of people in the streets. And
a lot of people, a lot of drugs, a lot of issues, a lot of trouble. I mean, it was a reasonable neighbourhood, but in the early 90s, Dublin was just, it was coming out of a real depression. There wasn't much work. A lot of people struggling, families struggling. Not huge poverty, but there was, a good bit of poverty in the area. I was fine. We weren't poor, but we weren't rich. But it was there. There was there wasn't a lot of confidence, and there wasn't a lot of hope. And when you got out into nature, you saw a bigger world, bigger horizons. Than the dole. Mm-hmm. It was.
And the first taste of that was through the national parks.
Which was a bit of kind of necessity, because I needed food and needed to do something. It was an adventure. It was outdoors. It wasn't in the classroom. School was okay, but it wasn't.
So had you kind of left school then, or?
No, I was still at school. I managed, I finished my, I finished the Leaving Cert, skipped fourth year TY, and I finished the Leaving Cert just about, and I went on to a cabinet making apprenticeship, and I worked at that for a year and a half, 2 years, and I just couldn't take it anymore being inside. And I actually remember playing football. We had these sets of garages, all the houses, this kind of real concrete, and we used to play soccer in these this small areas, like five-side football. And I remember just at the end of that one time, all the lads standing around having a smoke, and I just thought, I can't stay here. I can't do this. I can't be here for the rest of my life. I don't care if it's really hard or if it means I have to go back to school. I'm going to go and try and get that job that guy, Chris Barron, had. Even if there's only one in the country, I'm going to do it, or I'm going to try doing it, and I'm going to just keep going until I get the job. So it was, I had kind of, not dissimilar to yourself, I just had an epiphany kind of moment, and I just said, I'm going to go for it. And I'm not going to listen to, I went to the career guidance teacher. This was 2 years out of school, went back to school because I had to apply for a course that he had told me about. It was quite a practical course. I wasn't really very academic at that time. And I went back to career guidance teacher and I said, I want to do this job, a wildlife job. And she said, that's impossible. That's what the career, this at the time it was all, study computers. And we just...
I've heard of so many stories, though, of people who have been in school and the career guidance has either disagreed or said you couldn't be that or this and that.
She just hadn't come across it before. It was just so abstract.
And what was your response?
I just said, well, I'm going to do it. I just want you to sign the form. Just put the school stamp on and that's it. And I had applied for agricultural science in UCD, which was the only course in Ireland that kind of was relevant. Now, I wasn't into farming or anything like that. I didn't get in, didn't get the marks. So as I went and did, I was interested in woodwork in school, but the kind of trade was in the family, but just wasn't for me. I couldn't work indoors the whole time. I just couldn't do it. So I went to Wales and saved up money, went to Wales and did this course, countryside management. And it was a year in college, a year industrial placement, so you could work, save up money, and then one more year back into college, and you got a HND, a higher national diploma. And so that's what I did. It was very practically orientated, and I wasn't too kind of academic, which I was dreading.
Well, I know you say too, but you are somewhat academic.
I am now. Yeah. I went on and I've studied and I've done, right to where a PhD. But it was because I found a subject I was interested in.
And what was that?
Basking sharks.
How did you discover that?
I was off the coast of Malin Head one day in a boat. And we were going out to the island. Des Mills unfortunately passed away. Lovely man out of
What island?
Inishowen Island. So it's the most northerly island of Ireland. Yeah.
Does anyone live in it?
No, about 7 or 8 miles off the coast of Malin Head, which is the most northerly point of the island of Ireland. So we were going out there I was going out to do bird surveys with the job that I'd got at that time. And we came across this big shoal, is what I could call it, of basking sharks. And when you see a basking shark up close, it's like meeting a dinosaur. It's just unbelievable, like. And they're 7 or 8 meters, the length of the boat. They're just swimming along, just like super slow. They don't care you're there, like. And we just kind of cruised in around them, and more kept coming up to the surface. And there was around, I don't know, 60, 70 basking sharks. Wow. And it was just like this kind of a real moment in my life. And afterwards, we went out, afterwards we went back in, and I went to look and to see, was 50 or 60 basking sharks. Was that a lot of basking sharks? Was it normal? Was it unusual? And I couldn't find the answer. So nobody knew. So there was no kind of population estimates. There was no kind of really good scientific data. So I said, wow, that's really unusual, because these are they're quite often seen around the coast of Ireland. And Ireland's well known for basking sharks.
So I know Donegal is well known for them. Yeah. Where else? Just the whole coast in general?
Yeah, the west coast of Ireland in particular. So you'd have Cork and Kerry, Clare, and then some around the Ireland Islands, Mayo. There's a few spots in Mayo, and then the coast of Donegal. So typically around headlands where there's really strong tidal flows, and that's where you get them on the surface. Now they might be in other places below the surface, and because they're a fish, they don't have to come to the surface to breathe like a whale, which has to do that regularly. So it's
So when you say they don't need to come to the surface as often?
Ever.
No.
They could just live their whole life at the bottom of the ocean.
Jesus.
Yeah, there's just food. It's food that's driving their...
So they get their oxygen. They're able to get oxygen through the water.
Yeah, so... and people often, not all the time, but some people, they're kind of like an honorary whale, but they're not a whale because they're so big. People find it hard to get their head around that they're a fish. So they often use scientific methods that are developed for whales and apply them to basking sharks. And one of them was how to count them when they're at sea. But those methods that have been developed for whales are dependent on an animal having to surface every so often. So they're not really applicable to basking sharks. So that's where I kind of spent my time doing my research on how to develop a method to count them and census them.
Were you studying at the time?
No.
Okay, so this is before you...
No, I had done my HND. It was many years later. I was just working as a conservation ranger for Life Service in Inishowen. So I was the wildlife conservation ranger.
And did you just come across the basking sharks by accident?
Yes, we were just.
Were you aware that they were even a thing?
Yeah, I'd see when I was fishing and I was mitching off school one time and fishing. Used to go fishing in Howth, up the road from where I lived, and a basking shark came into the harbour one time. I remember seeing it and it's kind of stuck in my mind.
Wow.
And it was real ooh. And now I know that's really unusual on the east coast of Ireland, but it was just a kind of a moment.
It's funny then that you had that,
and then years later it's like basking sharks, is there something there, some sort of connection, and it just really sparked my interest. I just couldn't believe that there's something so big, so kind of commonly found around the coast, and that we knew very little about them, and particularly, is the population increasing or decreasing? Is there anything we need to do to try and protect them? Maybe we don't. That was the kind of conclusion, maybe we don't need to do much about protecting them. I read that they had been fished in the past, quite a lot, exploited for their oil and liver, but if you don't know the population increasing or decreasing, it's very difficult to make a determination about if a species is going to survive or not.
So whenever you decided that you were going to do your research on them, what was the first thing that you wanted to figure out, and what are the things that you figured out, and how did you figure them out? Like,
yeah, geez, it's a real rabbit hole now we're going down.
Let's go.
So, well, I wanted to figure out how much time they spent on the surface and why they were on the surface, because if they don't need to come up to breathe, then why do they bother coming up to the surface? And a lot of this is back to the conversation we've been having. So a lot of the old Irish names for the basking shark suggest they're like sunfish. So they're giving you a hint. Live on Corgrania, they're called. So it means the fish, great leviathan of the sun. So in sunny conditions, when the water is calm, that's when basking sharks are on the surface. So the name again is giving you a hint, like the descriptor of the animal's behavior, not of the kind of shape or of the look of the animal, but it's more about behavior. And I think that's really interesting that the old Irish names are often about behavior of an animal as opposed to description of its appearance.
So even the Irish had an awareness of them.
Oh yeah,
years ago.
There's like quite a few stories about them as well and things like that. So,
cool. So that's interesting.
Yes, yeah. So like these things have been around millennia, so they're a long time here. And we so. Initially, I looked at how do you go about counting them? What are the different methods? Are they now we'd call it? Are they scientifically robust? So do they make sense? And is there any way to improve them? So at the time, there was no population estimates, and as part of my research, I looked at how much time they spend on the surface and what were the drivers or the things that, how would you say? Indicate whether they're going to be on the surface or the duration of time they spend there. So that's sunshine and wind speed were the two things. But who knew? It's called a basking shark.
You didn't know this at the time.
Well, I mean, the hint's in the name.
Yeah,
but proving it scientifically is very different than knowing it and having the intuition.
But whenever you figured that out through the Irish name, that kind of give you an insight.
Yeah, it gives you a hint. So
figure out.
Yeah, and you say, well, what are we going to study, and what are we what we call variables. So what different things are we going to try and account for through our scientific studies? So we had wind speed, we had sunshine, so the amount of sunshine there was during the day, or the power of the sun as well. We could do so how hot it was. We have sea surface temperature, and we had tidal direction and tidal speed. So these were things that we suspected were driving the behavior of the animals, but we found it was only the sunshine and wind speed. So the other two actually didn't have any scientific effect, so we couldn't find any influence of them on their behavior.
Why did they come up just to feel the sun?
Yeah, well, yeah. I suppose the real reason, so I know that those things is driving their behavior, but why is, well, I think it's to do with food. Yeah, so it's food. Although in recent years there's been these torus, or these big circles of basking sharks forming. We had them off the coast of Donegal. And
when you see circles, they're actually in a group of circles.
Circling, and the use of drones nowadays has allowed us to really get that kind of aerial perspective of their behaviors and kind of see down through the water surface. Because when you're on a boat and you're near fish, you get a lot of reflection. So it's difficult to see down. So it turns out that there's a lot of sharks. You might have 2 or 3 on the surface, but there's a lot more down below. And they have these big circular kind of... It looks like a slow disco, basically, a roller disco, and they're all going around the same direction. And they're down off the coast of Clare these last number of years, and they're not feeding. So is it mating behavior? Is it preparation for migration? We don't really know that. So there's still a lot of questions. Socializing, exactly. So there's still a lot of unknowns.
And how are you able to count them then? Like, what was your results like? Because I'm assuming you're having to go out and sit on a boat for
yeah,
a
you
lot
can
of
fly a
days.
plane or a boat, and you do these what they call transects. So you do these lines, and then you see how many you've counted, and then you have a multiplier by how often or what's the expectation that they'll be on the surface. So if they spend half their time on the surface, for instance, and I see 10 sharks, then there should be 20 sharks in the area. So that's a kind of a very basic way of looking at it, because they're only 50% chance of them being on the surface. So it gets a little bit more complicated than that, but that's the kind of basic premise. So if you can predict how much time they're going to spend on the surface during the particular conditions when you're surveying. So if the sun is this power and the wind speed is this, then you can have a multiplier for the amount of sharks that you have actually seen.
Okay.
So yeah, that's
figured that out through your research.
Well, we got a multiplier. Yeah, we figured one out. Yeah. It was interesting. We figured out a lot of other things, and we created some. We brought the first GoPro into Ireland from America.
No way.
And that wasn't that long ago. So we were at a research conference, and a man came to me in America and he said, we got these cameras called GoPros now. And I was like, what's that? And he says, like, underwater. So we had to make up our own housing because they didn't have underwater housings for them at the time. Now, obviously, everybody has them. It's amazing the changes in technology that have happened. We put cameras on sharks as well with these accelerometers. So you see them on the back of the rugby jerseys. Yeah. And it talks about movement and impact, and you have it in your phone. When you turn your phone, it can tell whether it's upright or sideways. So we put 3-dimensional ones of them on, and they can tell you how the animal moves and sways and the energy, and you can kind of have a proxy for energy expenditure. And then we had cameras on looking forward to see what the prey density was. So that was all quite innovative at the time.
How were you able to get them onto the sharks?
Yeah, great difficulty. So were
you in the water with the sharks?
No, just on. Not very keen being in the water with.
But they're not dangerous though.
No, but they do get a bit spooked if you kind of give them a fright, because they're so kind of lazy, and they're not slow. They're kind of quite deceptive. They'd be going at about 3 or 4 knots, and they're kind of just moving through the water, and we would come up very slowly on them, engine out of gear, and just kind of drift in beside them. And then I developed this kind of clamp method with a guy an Austrian in Australia, Nico. So you meet some crazy, interesting individuals when you're in that kind of scene. And we developed this clamp method for putting the camera on the fin, the main dorsal fin of the shark. And we had this kind of a spear, and you put that on, and it worked relatively okay. And then we had galvanic links, so they dissolve in seawater over time, and then that released the arm of the clamp, and then the camera would float to the surface, and it had a little radio beacon on it, so you'd go back out then and try and recover it. But nowadays there's a lot more, you can get smaller GPS is a lot cheaper and things like that. So this is only 10, 15 years ago.
It's not that long ago, but technology moves so fast.
Unbelievable.
But how long were the cameras? So I know you said they dissolve, but what was the time?
Yeah, we had ones. We started off about 40 minutes or an hour, and then we left them on 3 hours, and then on for 12 hours. Yeah, it was our maximum deployment.
And then that camera GoPro would record for how
very
long?
Similar to a GoPro. Yeah, for that duration of time. Yeah, it was difficult then. If you're really on high definition, trying to record all of that information on the SD cards weren't as good or as powerful as they are now. It was cool that we recorded a basking shark breaching, so jumping full out of the water with the camera on.
No way.
Yeah, and that was my first paper, so scientific paper. So it was kind of cool.
Where can I see that video?
It's online as well. Yeah.
Class. So they can breach completely out.
Because I
just have that impression that they're super slow,
super kind of docile, like a cow, and we showed that they're as powerful and as explosive as a great white shark. Wow. So we compared the two. We had the information from the two, and Yeah, it was.
But they don't need to be like that because
No, they
they're
don't.
not that kind of.
I mean, they're
not
feeding. The
on
great
small-
white is feeding on seals and fish and what have you.
Where they're
mackerel sharks.
They're just coming through with their mouth.
Basking sharks just opens the mouth. It's like a jet engine.
Could a human, if you were swimming, could they swallow you up?
No, I don't like. They have a kind of a.
I just mean you could
yeah.
fit under their mouths are
on
pretty
the larger
big, like.
ones, yeah. But they're quite they're selective feeders, so you'll see them opening and closing their mouth as they go through a patch. So if there's a lot of jellyfish or that, they'll close their mouth. So they're conscious of what they're feeding on, even if it is quite slow, and the eyes are quite set quite far back, but they've got this huge nose. Which is really interesting, and that's one of the kind of parts of the research now where a lot of people are looking at and how do they detect their prey, which is this plankton that kind of floats around. It's like soup, basically, little insects that float around in the sea, and where they get collected up in these tidal lines around Malmhead or big headlands that we have on the coast of Ireland in particular. You get this collection of all this food, and soup just basically gets pushed together by the tides. And then that's what attracts the animals like basking sharks or whales. So
how do you know? Like, are they living there? Do you know what I mean? Is that their home?
Yeah.
Because I'm always under the impression that fish are always moving.
Yeah. So they're what we call a wide-ranging species. So they, I mean, and this is the thing that kind of cracks me up a little bit about the science side of things when people... politics sometimes comes into it. So, they're Irish sharks or Scottish sharks or Isle of Man sharks or English sharks or French sharks. And there's a lot of different research teams studying the same animals effectively. And I mean, for them to move, we were tracking them. So we put these GPS trackers on them and we put visual kind of tags on them as well. And we were tracking sharks from Malmhead into Scottish waters, into Northern Irish waters, back to Malmhead in less than 12 hours. What? So they're just moving around. Like, our perception of boundaries are completely arbitrary when it comes to the marine and fish species. But we tracked ones from Malmhead down to the coast off the Cape Verde Islands. We tracked one across to the east coast of North America. So, like, these animals are like the Atlantic is their home. Yeah. Ireland is a tiny island on the coast.
One of their homes.
Yeah. It's like where they go for a good feed.
Yeah.
But they spend a lot of time in the open ocean, in deep water. We associate them with being a coastal species because that's where we see them. Mm-hmm. But a lot of the time they're in the open ocean and they're down at depths of 400, 600 meters.
Jesus.
So they don't have to come up here to the coast, but they're coming here for a good feed in the spring and the summer. And then there's this something else, this kind of social aspect of them meeting up with other sharks, presumably for mating, going to the disco, what have you. So that's it,
Very good.
Yeah, so they're interesting species, but
they sound today. But I always feel like large fish I feel like they're very intelligent creatures. You mean, you look at whales.
Yeah.
And you look at the dolphins,
Yeah, I mean, they are
super social, like,
and people.
There's some species that are even the crossover and work together.
Yeah, the dolphins definitely and will herd, and some of the whales you'll see them herding shoals of fish, and they'll be pushing the sprat, and you get this kind of little ripple effect on the surface of the sea when they're pushing them all up into a bait ball. So yeah, I mean, what I always say to people here in Donegal, especially, in half an hour, how would you like to go meet a dinosaur? And they look at you like you're crazy.
Asking me? Because I've already been thinking about this. So I'm like, fuck, and I get on book Malmhead and go see a basking shark.
Yeah, but you have to be able to go at short notice. That's the thing. It's not, it's weather dependent, and the animals have to play ball. They have to be there as well. But certainly bottlenose dolphins.
But the conditions.
Whales. Yeah, I mean, the weather we have out there today is absolutely perfect for it.
We'll just end
We'll just go. It's but we're right on the doorstep of one of, if not the most productive marine areas in the world. So Ireland, and we're going to talk a little bit about conservation, nature conservation on land, on kind of in the soil, let's say. But our marine, we're just very small island on the edge of the Atlantic, off the coast of Europe. And that's our real Himalayas as such. Like, our marine environment is certainly globally of international significance. Our terrestrial environments, the land environments, not really on that same level or that same scale. Now, they're important for us because we're a kind of a rural people and we're still connected with sheep farming and cows and what have you. But the marine side of things is really where Ireland has a lot to offer on the international scale. So yeah, it's and the basking sharks and, you know, experiences with whales and dolphins and what have you.
When you say dolphins, bottlenose dolphins?
Bottlenose dolphins
up around
off
there
the coast of Malin all the time.
Do you feel that they're interactive with you?
Yes.
You know, when you're up in the boat there?
Yeah, they are.
What about do you feel like the basking sharks have kind of become more trusting?
No. I think they're definitely more distant, and I never got the same sense of kind of interaction. I think they're just always felt that they were just in their own zone, kind of focused on what they were doing, and you were really just kind of butting into their life, sticking something in them, or getting in their way, you know, annoying them. You were like an annoyance to them, and in a way that's something about research you have to be very careful about, that you don't, you know, be the problem. And you don't cause issues for the species that you're trying to study. And if you promote them and the conservation of them, like we did at the time, a lot of people then wanted to go out and see them, and they're all out in their boats and they're all out in with their drones and what have you. So you got to then make suggestions to people. You know, there's a code of conduct that you really should follow. And there's a way of interacting with them safely. And if you want to promote something, you also have a responsibility to promote responsible interaction with the species. So yeah, it's we took us a while to get there, but
very good
in the end.
Fair play.
Yeah,
sounds like good work. Sounds very interesting. Definitely sounds like something I'd love to go and see someday. You have to keep me in mind. 100%. Please do.
Yeah.
But you mentioned then about the land again, coming back to the land, the conservation in Ireland. The landscape's completely different because I suppose humans. There's not a part of Ireland that isn't influenced by humans. Yeah,
our terrestrial land, our landscape is human made, and often people think the countryside that we have is, you know, like wild in some way, or that even the woodlands that we have are wild, but they're not. They're just the influence of humans on all of the habitats and species we have in Ireland has just been so much that what we have is changed or degraded. It's not all completely degraded, but it's certainly been changed and influenced by man. And where we live here in Donegal, we have the Highlands of Donegal, or the central area with the mountains, and people go there, and that's the national park where I work now, and they think that's natural. And it's difficult to explain to them, actually, this is a degraded landscape. All the trees have been cut down, it's been drained, it's been exploited, minerals have been taken out, and people, our vision or impression of what's natural or what is nature has been changed over time, over the generations. And it's hard to convince people that what they're looking at should be changed because they're so used to it and they're comfortable with it. They're saying, well, it's like that in my grandparents' time. And you're going, yeah, but you know, that doesn't make it right. Mm-hmm. It's been like that a long time, but it doesn't make it right. And what we're trying to do there now is to introduce trees back into the landscape.
What kind?
Native trees, so birch trees, oak trees mainly.
Because there's so little of them trees in Ireland. Like all them forests are gone. Like it's very, very little. That's the only one I know of.
Very few patches of what we would call ancient woodland. So it's been woodland continuously since the last ice age. Like it's never been completely cleared, so there was no trees there. Very few of them, but even those patches have been influenced by humans. People go in, cut trees, cut limbs for boat building, make charcoal, graze it, regularly throughout the year. So it's, they're man influenced or semi-natural environments. So I think we need to be honest with ourselves. If we're trying to work with nature or have a relationship with nature, we need to be honest about what's happened and what we've done in the past, and not kid ourselves that what we have now is something to protect or conserve in the state that it's in. So I suppose that's maybe where I start to differ from some of my colleagues, where they think that what we have now is worthwhile conserving in the current state. Other people, you get to this kind of stage really where you ask the question, do you want to preserve the landscape like a historic landscape? It's like our grandparents. This is the landscape our grandparents made. And do we want it to look like that forever, like a kind of museum piece? And in some areas of Britain, like the Lake District, they've decided that's what they want to do. And that's fine. And that was kind of like their peak, Victorian era, where they really, I suppose they see that as maybe the peak of kind of British society at that time. But in Ireland, we have that kind of different relationship with that time. Or do we want to conserve the landscape like we have it now, the way it's made up, different habitats, wet heat, dry heat, woodland? Or do we want to restore the landscape? But if we're going to restore, what are we going to restore to, or when? So what I often say to people, what do you want to restore? Do you want to restore woodland to pre-famine? Because there was a famine in Ireland, a number of famines, but a really big one, when, if someone's dying and a tree or a stick is of value, you're going to use it. Of course, and hedgerows and what have you, we lost a lot of habitats during that period of time.
Why that specific period of time?
Because people were extremely poor,
right,
and people were needed resources. So there was a very heavy burden on the land at that time. So even when you read about evictions, say from properties during that period, the 1800s, they would take the roof beams with them. So a piece of wood was worth a lot at the time. So that's how valuable sticks or, a trunk of a tree was to rebuild or to make a shelter with it. So they've been evicted from the building. The roof was tossed in, usually in the doors, but they would take the timbers with them because they were valuable. So oftentimes they were using pine taken out of the bog and what have you. So timber was scarce, very scarce. So the woodland levels we have now are some of, if not the lowest, comparable with our European countries. They had different kind of histories and different experiences, but we were kind of right on the brink then in that mid 1800s, and all of the wildlife and countryside was kind of stripped bare, basically because people were starving. So they were going to try and eat or use as much as whatever resources they had to hand. So do you want to go back to woodland before then?
Wow, I never knew that.
Yeah.
But I mean, you think about it, they had nothing else. They just
Nothing.
Shelter was their resource.
I mean, you catch a bird, you can eat it.
Yeah.
You catch a mammal, you can eat it. If you're hard times and you read about people eating grass, you'd eat a mammal before you'd eat grass, or you'd eat a bird. So wildlife at that time, certainly there was mapping surveys done in the early 1800s, and to accompany that, they did a survey and a kind of discussion about the resources in areas, and the Ordnance Survey. And it was really interesting because they described what resources were in kind of townlands and locations, particularly in Donegal where they started. And, they talk about not a tree or a bush within sight, for 10 miles, because the landscape was just stripped bare. And that's before the Great Famine. Jeez. That's 1820s, 1830s.
What was it? Look, so was it to build houses or was it to build
houses,
boats?
light fires, build boats, whatever people needed at the time. So that's one period. So that's a kind of defining moment, maybe in kind
a big change in the landscape,
and
a lasting change.
And society at that time decided, because the courts were in English, they were gonna move to the English language. that's kind of one of those moments in mid 1800s. And there's an introduction of blackface sheep as well from Scotland. So industrial sheep farming comes in, and the kind of small holdings, what they call crofts in Scotland, were kind of done away with. There was an Enclosure Act as well. So the landscape we see now with hedges and fences and drains started to become established at that time. Before that, you had a rundale system where land was held in common, and every year they had to go out and decide, oh, you're going to have this bit of field and I'll have this bit of field, and it was rotated. And
so there was a different system.
Oh, completely different, yeah.
An Irish system. It was
well, no, similar to the British system, but they had an Enclosure Act at a different time. So it was just the land was managed differently here by, I suppose it was a landlord system. And after the Act of Union, a lot of those landlords moved to their estates in Britain, and there was less care or focus put on the land here. It was just seen as a tax raising revenue. By most, but not all. But it did have an impact on how the landscape was managed, and then how the landscape, how the landscape is managed is how nature is managed. Mm-hmm. And before that, again, 1600s, colonisation, especially in Ulster. Deforestation was a huge part.
Was that kind of when it started, 1600s?
Yeah, I mean, so the Gaels as such, if you look at the old, didn't have photos then, they had wood carvings. Pretty much all those wood carvings are of people in woodland.
Yes.
Yeah. So they're having a feast, they're in the woods, they're having a meeting, they're in the woods. It's not that the whole place was covered in woodland, but it was more, when you look at the maps as well, it was more akin to Europe, so about a third to 40% of the country was covered in woodland. After the 1600s, the Gaels kind of hung out in the woodlands and they hid there. So there was a lot of deforestation activities by, I suppose, the English and Scotch planters who were brought in for security for themselves, but also to build the Royal Navy, which was being built up at that time, the East India Company. It was a quick resource you could exploit and sell on the market to get some money for yourself to establish your small holding. So it was an easy way. It's the same that happened in North America. It's the same happening in South America now. Cut the trees, develop the land for agriculture, establish your farm. And we're just 400 years ahead of them.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's still happening across the world.
Happening across the world, yeah.
Yeah. Do you see a way forward, or like how we can make a difference, or like where does it start? Because I know there's definitely a lot of groups and organizations. No, I read stuff on the internet, so sometimes I just never know what they believe. And yeah. I hear, I'm like, is that true? Is that not true? Or is that just to make things look good? So I've heard stuff about some groups that are about protecting the Amazon, but apparently that's not even true, that this group, that you get some badge or something they put on your products, but really I can't even remember the name. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So like, yeah, there's what's true and what's not, like.
Yeah, that's very difficult. I think we're in an era now where you need to do a bit of research. You need to make up your own mind. You have to be an informed person, and you can't always trust the label, let's say.
Yes.
You need to, is it authentic? Is it not authentic? There's a lot of greenwashing.
Yes, because, exactly.
The environment is seen as, and that's one thing that the environmental movement has been very successful at, is making it cool. So Greenpeace back in the 70s and 80s with the posters of the whales.
Who's Greenpeace
so
now?
Greenpeace
is that a party?
Greenpeace were like an activist movement for environment. Save the Whale was one of their big campaigns, and they were very successful in that. And they kind of made environmentalism, it was very fringe movement at that time, but it has become much more mainstream. It's in the conversation. I mean, people talk about climate change all the time, and environment is reported on in the news all the time. That wasn't the case back in the 80s and the 70s. We were still in a very much a nature is there to be exploited mindset. Nature is there for humans to extract resources from. And that's, I suppose it's kind of based in the Bible kind of concept.
Yes, I only heard this. It's come up because I've been running this theme of conversations around nature. It's come up a few times that in the Bible there's this extract.
Well,
yes.
I don't know if I would.
Is that what you're saying?
I would say it. Yeah, I mean, it's more that man, inverted commas, has dominion over the animals and the birds and the land, and I suppose that's setting humans up in a kind of a hierarchy that we're there, we're in charge, and they're there for our benefit to see and do with what we will, as opposed to.
But that is what has happened.
That is, in many countries.
Yeah, that have followed them types of religions.
Yes.
If you think of the ones who are not religious and have their own relationship with creation, they're the ones that live with the land
in a more
indigenous,
more First Nations or indigenous
and appreciate
peoples,
nature. Because I've met a shaman from the Amazon. It would have been through the psychedelic experience too, but he's amazing. Like you want to see him talk about the land, just talks about the appreciation for what it gives him, gives his family. So he's always about giving back, it's just giving thanks and appreciation to the land and just being grateful for what it gives him.
It's a two-way relationship. So rather than a one-way relationship. And I suppose with any good family members, you can be a family member who takes, or you can be a family member who contributes and gives something back. And now there's not as much emphasis. I wasn't around, 60, 70 years ago, but my impression is there's not as much emphasis on what you can do to contribute to society. And it's more about the individualism and how you're feeling inside and how does it make you feel, as opposed to how does it make other people feel, or how does it contribute to the greater whole of people or our relationship with nature on the planet, which is quite limited resources.
Yeah.
So Ireland is. Last year I went to a course, a national park manager course in the States. And they, they're the founders of national parks, and I'm a real strong believer in them as national parks as a concept. And in Glenveagh, for instance, it was privately owned land held by an individual for their pleasure to take their guests there and what have you. So only a few people really got to experience it.
This was when?
Up until the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s.
So the parks were... Was it a park then?
No, it wasn't. It was just a private estate.
Yeah, but still the road and all still went through it and all,
well, passed by the side, So,
that road that's there at the minute, that was always there, right?
Yeah, but you couldn't go for a walk there.
Okay.
There was no, you couldn't go and experience the gardens or visit the valley in the way that you can now. So now it's a public space owned by the state for the citizens. To go and immerse themselves and experience nature. And it's set aside for the management of nature and for people to enjoy that. And I think that's a better use of that piece of ground than it was for the pleasure of only a few people. I'm not saying that all of the land should be like that, but certainly it's important to set aside some good examples of what we have or have had in Ireland for people to go and understand and learn about nature. So that idea has come from America, the national parks. And when I was out there, I did a course with them. So they're kind of the founding fathers out in California, it was. Yeah. And there was 36 national park managers from around the world. And I was trying to explain to them what we had in Ireland. And they're from Africa and South America and North America and Europe as well. And they just couldn't get their head around it. And I said, basically, then in the end, I had to say, well, we have what you end up with after about 1,000 years of cutting down your trees, washing all your soil away, draining land. So I said, to the guys in South America, you're going to end up like us if you don't do something about it. But they were all managing national parks that were pretty much intact habitats that had been influenced by man, but weren't completely degraded. Whereas we're in a position in Ireland,
still somewhat untouched.
Yes, a lot of apex species. So they'll have eagles, bears, lions. So they have those kind of big predators
Big
at the
cats
top,
and stuff.
proper food webs, things that nutrient cycles are all working. Whereas we're in a very degraded environment, and we really need to do much more kind of drastic action to kind of restore the processes, restore the working relationships between the animals, to allow nature to heal itself. And that can be difficult because some people, like I was saying earlier, when they look at the landscape, they think that's already natural. And when you're trying to say to them, actually, it's not. And we're going to, we're cutting down trees, we're shooting deer, we're planting trees on that landscape that you think should look like that. It can be quite controversial, and people can get quite upset because they want it to be the way it was when they were younger. But life moves on and things renew. And that's why I think we shouldn't be trying to preserve the landscape or conserve it or restore it, but we should be trying to renew it. So it's an ongoing relationship.
So when you say what's the difference in conserving as opposed to renewing?
Well, renewing is you haven't decided exactly what the end point is. So it's an interactive relationship with nature. You're trying to put in place the building blocks to allow nature to restore itself. So nature will decide exactly where the trees go. Yes. Through natural regeneration, rather than us saying there was trees here in 1800, so therefore we're going to plant the exact same type of trees in that exact area, because things have moved on from then.
Yes, and nature evolves.
You can't go back.
Yeah. So how do you let that happen? Is that happening?
Well, we're trying. Yeah. So what we're doing is we're reducing, I suppose, what we see as the pressures or threats. So in the Glenveagh example, the deer herd there has got absolutely out of control and completely overgrazed the area for probably 70 or 80 years.
What if you introduce wolves?
Yeah, that's the obvious thing that people say. Until a wolf prefers to run after a deer that's very fast than it does eating a sheep, which stands there and goes, yeah. It's not really a runner.
No, I know. I just was throwing it there, it's what would
that would be a more natural solution. But we're not there. We're not there. So what we're doing is we shoot the deer, or cull them, as the term is, and we reduce the numbers to allow the vegetation to grow and the trees and woodland then to restore itself over time. And as the trees grow up, the deer filter back into that area, because you're not trying to eradicate them out of the landscape. You need deer to kind of browse and to create that kind of mosaic in the landscape. And nature's messy. It's not perfect. It's not in neat little squares. Like a lot of the scientific approach to managing nature is, it's perfection. It's academic, but in reality, you've got wet pools, which is bog. You've got little patches of woodland. You've got dry bits of ground. You've got wet pieces of ground, and you can't put neat little fences around everywhere. Everything. So that's that type of habitat. That's this type of habitat. When you're managing at a landscape scale, 17,000 hectares. That's big for Ireland.
That's just the size of Glenveagh.
That's the size of the park.
Does that include the Errigal? No.
There's part of Errigal is in, yes.
The Glenveagh side of it.
Yes, yeah. And then there's other parts are in commonage. So it's difficult to bring people with you, because a national park is held in trust for the people. So the people have to believe in the idea and it's worthwhile. Or the minister could say, I'm going to rent it out for grazing. So people need to really believe in that idea. So you have to bring them with you, and you have to convince them that what you're doing is the right thing. So cutting that, like recently we cut down a lot of trees in the national park, and they're, but you cut down the trees and you're telling us you're trying to restore the woodland. And we're like, yeah, but those trees were planted 40 years ago. They're non-native pine trees from other countries. So it's complicated.
Pine trees, I'm not going to say I hate them, but I mean, they lack something. Maybe it's just a knowing within that these aren't supposed to be here.
Yeah. I suppose we need to be careful about being elitist as well. But if we're trying to get to a place where it's nature can kind of manage itself, to a degree, we are part of nature, so we're always going to be part of the equation. The non-native trees, certainly, some of them seem to really outcompete what we regard as native, like oak and birch. So we need to keep them suppressed or take them out of the equation to allow the native plants to flourish. So it's trying to strike a balance. It's going to, without being a gardener.
Like you walk in, there's these big straight lines.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
That's
just not I don't mind getting into the woods, but when you walk in, then you're just looking at big rows. You know what I mean?
There's no light, but that's how they're planted, how we manage as well.
The ground's very
there's no
diversity,
no
biodiversity,
no vegetation.
Just they're very
Well, that's a symptom. That's a symptom of the way we plant them as well. So we're in their native woodland in Oregon, in America, Sitka spruce, for instance. There's plenty of natural light, and there's lots of biodiversity, but they're managed in a different way. So the way we plant them here, and then clear fell them.
What's the purpose of it?
It's for timber, for logging.
Strictly for timber, yeah. Because they grow really fast.
Yes, and they grow fast in Ireland because we've got such great growing conditions. So we're basically temperate rainforest here. But on the other hand, it's what I often say to people, we can grow an oak tree here in 60 to 80 years. That takes 120 to 140 in France.
Oh.
So we can grow Sitka spruce in twice the speed North America, but we can also do hardwoods in twice the speed. So it's just having a longer strategic vision for what we want to do in the countryside means not always trying to get the fastest kind of payback. And that was, the state when they established the kind of forestry schools, and that they took that German model of planting and clear felling. And that was all the rage in the early and mid 1900s. But now we know better. It's more continuous forestry cover, taking out selective trees, and it's much better for nature and wildlife. And we need to transition to that. And a country can do that when you have a bit more money. But if you're really poor, like we were in the 40s and the 50s, they were just looking for anything, a quick buck. And Ireland needed those businesses to do well, to get some, to establish industry here. But now we're, I say, a little bit more affluent, certainly on the European scale. So we need to use those resources we have now to try and bring ourselves into a more sustainable, vision or management of the countryside.
Yes. You were talking about the national parks there in America, well, worldwide, but I've been to Yellowstone.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
I mean, you can't compare them to Ireland.
What did you think?
Oh, I mean, it was epic.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. It was different. Like, you were driving through these roads through mountains, loads of forests, rivers, bison were everywhere. And they're big, so there were hot springs and stuff. I know it's a different landscape, but they're huge. It was like you were driving into an area,
Yeah.
But that was my experience of it,
And in America, they have a lot of space in America.
Yeah.
I know they've a bigger population now, but they still have an awful lot of space. Like, we're the old countries, let's say, and we've
small island too,
thousands and thousands of years of humans here, 8,000 years, maybe 10,000 years of humans here. America, with the kind of modern colonization, let's say, it's pretty new. It's hundreds of years you're talking about the history there. Obviously, First Nations people were there long before, but that kind of modern exploitive, extractive kind of approach is new. And that idea that they were able to set aside these huge tracts of land, just say, we're going to keep them the way they were. And the first national parks was no mining, no forestry, and no hunting. So at that time, furs and pelts was really big industry. In North America, it was a huge driver of industry. So they were able to set aside those places, Yosemite, Yellowstone, and other people have kind of taken that as a great example. And we've done it here. But the bits of ground or land that we've done it with are often legacy sites that have maybe been donated to the state. They mightn't be the best examples of the habitats we have. So there might be extra work to try and bring them back into good condition. Whereas they had it's not a new country, but like they could pick the best examples at the time.
And they had the space.
Yeah,
because we are a small island too.
Yeah. And, you know, we're not very densely populated, but it's densely managed. And there's a lot of people living in the countryside in Ireland compared to other countries.
Yeah, like there's not really anywhere rural in Ireland that you won't get people living.
Exactly.
Like it's although it may be quiet in spots, but there's someone there,
and you
not too far away down.
What are they doing? How do they make a living?
I know.
How could you live here?
But they find a way.
They find a way. Survivors. And
but like you're one of the very few who would move out of Dublin and live in the countryside. It's very unusual. Would you agree?
Yeah, my friend. Well, there's a small cohort.
There is.
My friends think
small.
I'm crazy, and they go, "What do you do up there?"
Because they think there's nothing to do.
Yeah,
but it depends on your interests too.
Exactly. It's the end of the world for them, and Donegal is like an expedition in their mind. They think going to Cork and Kerry is not far, but they think going to Donegal, although it's the same time on the road, it's an expedition. It's like going to Alaska. They're just like they'll be packing sleeping bags in the car, in case they break down. And it's just a mindset. It's a perception. And I remember when saying, "Oh yeah, I'm going to Donegal." Oh,
did you have that?
No, I suppose I was attracted to those places, so that attracted to me rather than kind of repelled me. But as my friends, when they come up, even they came up for our wedding and that, they're like, "Oh, it's not that far away," and I was like, "Yeah, I'm trying to tell you, I got ATMs up here," and you're going, yeah. But
where's the horse and carriage?
What do you do there? Everything's on my doorstep here that I'm interested in: wildlife, nature, boating. I can walk out my door and I'm on the beach in 2 minutes. You have a quality of life here that is, in my opinion, so much better than living in a very tight cluster with other people. But it's not for everyone. Yeah,
and you know what? That's something that I feel as well. So I lived in Galway for 10 years and then lived in London for 2 years. And I always thought I wanted that living in a hustle bustle. But moving back has taught me actually that's what I don't want. And the thought of living in a city again, I don't mind going for weekends and here and there, but I cannot wait to get back to the calm, the quiet, the peace, just the feeling it gives me, because I feel like I'm quite sensitive to a city now. Too long in that place is like, I feel like I'm out of balance.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I like visiting cities now, knowing that I'm going home to peace and quiet. But I say some people who come to visit us, they just get so nervous because it's dark. There's no street lights. It's so quiet at night. They can't sleep because it's so quiet. And you're just thinking, wow, that's where I'm down in Dublin, or I'm in London, or we go to Madrid quite a lot. And it's, it's really hustle and bustle. It's 24 hour and I'm lying awake with the eyes open, but it's just what you're used to.
The earplugs.
What's your environment? What are you used to? But I love it here. I wouldn't be anywhere else doing anything else. And
feels like home for you.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, always has. Donegal, and Donegal people have been really welcoming and accepting, and we're so far away here from Dublin and the central kind of power. They don't have that chip on their shoulder about the person from Dublin coming and telling them what to do. Less of it. Whereas if you're closer, you get to Dublin, Meath, Kildare, there's always, you're Jackie or Dub coming here. What are you telling us what to do for? And, there's that real resistance. Whereas Donegal, there was no real stamp of authority on the county for so long that, it's a very independent mindset and streak. And I love that. It's brilliant.
So that felt like home for you. Yeah. That kind of resonated with you, and integrating into the community was easy for you.
Yeah. I volunteer with the lifeboat here locally, Loxville Lifeboat, and that's been a great in for me to get to know people. Obviously, I didn't grow up here, and you have to be third generation to be considered local. My children are still outsiders, and there's a niceness in not being local as well. Not everybody knows your business, but joining the lifeboat gave me an opportunity to give something back to a community that has given so much to me, but also I got to know a lot of people, got to know a lot of business people. And just, when you go into the shops, you recognize people and what have you, and that's just makes you feel at home and comfortable. Yeah. And
you were an Inishowen ranger?
That's right.
Is that still part of the same group? It
is. So the National Parks and Wildlife Service. So I suppose I'm speaking today on my own behalf, and not on behalf of that. So they're part of, at the moment, Department of Housing, Heritage and Local Government. So they're what's called an executive agency, be like Met Éireann. So they're like a slightly independent organisation or agency within a department, and they have employed what are called conservation rangers, who gather information about wildlife in the wider countryside, and they also do an element of law enforcement. So if people are hunting illegally, they might be involved in looking at, say, people who are using the wrong type of snare or hunting on ground they don't have permission on.
What's a snare?
Snares for catching, you can use them for catching rats, but people would use them for catching maybe foxes or badgers.
What is it?
It's like a little noose that you would set up in a hedgerow, and the animal goes through and closes in around their.
But I assume there's something to attract them there. No?
Yeah, sometimes, or you might be on a run that the animal will go along the hedgerow, and then they usually go through that little space to get through the next thing. So animals often have a lot of, they're very habitual. Like the fox will often take the same route, or the badger. So people will put snares to try and catch them.
For what reason?
Well, it depends. So I suppose people don't like foxes because they eat their chickens, or this time of year they eat their lambs, or they don't like badgers because there's a perception there that they spread TB. And some people just take fun out of catching and killing wild animals. There is an element of society that do that.
So when what do you call it again? The snare catches them. Are they caught alive, or does it kill them, or do they suffocate them?
Well, they should be caught alive, and there's meant to be a stopper on it so they don't choke. But if it's an illegal snare, then they'll choke and they die in the snare. So that's cruel. Yes. So there's different legislation around what you can catch, what you can't catch, different times of year, open and closed seasons. So that's part of that role, as well as gathering information about protected habitats and species.
And what have you seen or learned about Inishowen then? As a ranger, what about the wildlife here?
It's spectacular. Yeah. I mean, it's an island effectively in Inishowen, the island of Owen, but it's coastline, Lough Foyle, Lough Swilly, and then the whole north coast of Inishowen. You've one of the most productive marine areas. So the Irish Sea is cold water with loads of nutrients meeting the Atlantic right at Malin Head. So you get this cold water, heavy nutrient with a lot of fresh water and nutrients meeting that warmer, salty Atlantic water right there. Frontal system is what we call it. So it's really, really productive. So loads of whales, loads of dolphins, loads of basking sharks, loads of fish. So that's a fantastic place just out in the sea. And then you come onto the land, you've sea cliffs with thousands of seabirds nesting Malin Head right down to Culdaff. And then inland you'll have kind of bogs and some small oak woodland and things like that. It's got nearly all the habitats you'd find in Ireland. It's like a mini Ireland, apart from karst landscape, which is like the burren. It's like that limestone pavement. That's the only habitat that I know of that you don't find here in Inishowen that you'd find elsewhere in Ireland.
Why is that?
It's just a stone formation. It's just a geology.
We don't have deers up here though.
There are deer now,
in Inishowen, brought in, or?
Yeah, they've been released from deer farms. So there was a time where there was deer farms. They were kind of promoted. There was grants available to have them, and then the bottom fell out of the market, the venison market, and a number of individuals let's say they didn't manage their fences very well, so the deer got out, and now have kind of re-established themselves in the wild.
So was the deer farm in Inishowen?
Yeah, there was quite a few of them. Yeah,
because I've met a guy. He was from Mayo, and he had a deer farm.
Yeah,
but he says they still jump. Like,
oh yeah,
like as good as the fences are, they'll still jump.
Deer will get through. Yeah, I've seen a deer jump over 6 foot. Yeah. And they're big animals. Lovely animal. Just need to be. Because we
managed,
don't have them predators, they need to be managed, and they'll feed on farmland and move in and around between farms as well, so they can kind of damage crops and what have you, and particularly woodland. So young woodland, they'll damage young trees and cause quite a lot of damage, cost a lot of money. So there's deer culling is quite a big activity in Donegal. It's probably quite a niche segment of the community that does it. Yeah, but it is.
So the only place I can think of really would be, I don't know, maybe like over the Cairn Mountain.
So Cairn Woodland, but up the back of.
I've never seen them. I mean, I don't be there that much either.
They're quite nocturnal, so they come out at night time. But if you go up that, there's a little oak woodland just as you're coming down into Cairn on your left hand side. There's a hill up the back there, so you'll get deer out on that hill during the day, and then they'll be down into the woodland in and out. They're naturally a woodland creature, so they prefer to be in woodland. But because we don't have much woodland in Ireland, they've ended up living on the hill. I have a woodland antlers from a woodland stag that I shot, and it's about 4 times the size of the antlers that you'll get from a hill stag. So like just shows you, the vegetation and the feeding that they're getting
when they're in
woodland is just so much better. So.
That's through the biodiversity of different plants.
Just different plants. There's much more variety. They're sheltered from the wind and the cold, so their body condition, they hold it over the winter time. It's just they do better. They thrive in their natural environment. So up on the hill, they're exposed to the rain and the wind and the cold and the snow, and throughout the winter, the feeding isn't as heather isn't as palatable or as good quality nutrients as they would get in an understory in a woodland. It's just.
And what's the community like then in Inishowen with conservation?
Very good, yeah. There's a couple of wildlife clubs. There's a couple of wildlife clubs. They meet on a Saturday morning, and they go around and visit the local haunts that are good for wildlife. A lot of bird watchers. There's people who are interested in whales and dolphins. Do surveys.
Dolphins, I'd love. I did read about someone in Moville who takes boat runs out. I think you can see dolphins. Yeah. What about the birds? What birds do you see? The biggest bird I would see around here is it's not an eagle, but
buzzard.
I do see a buzzard in odd time.
There's a lot of buzzards. Well, we're not far from Inch Lake. And at Inch Lake, you'll get a lot of thousands of hooper swans and geese, and they're all come down from Iceland and from Greenland to overwinter here, and then they'll go back up in the summer. So they migrate. So this is their.
Is that because the winter up there's harsher?
Yeah, it's too harsh for them. Yeah, so they go back up there, they breed up there, and then they'll come back down with their young.
And why do they go back up there?
I suppose that's just some of the species are going what we call feral, and that means they're starting to breed here. Grey lag geese, so they're not making that migration. What's driving that change? Some people say it's climate change. Some people say it's not, because if it's warmer, what difference would it make? Actually, the land would be more productive up there. I don't know. I don't have the answer to that yet. But that's one of the big kind of wildlife migrations that arrives on Inishowen, that Inch Lake. So Lough Foyle and Lough Swilly are like 2 big highways, and all the birds are coming in from the Arctic, and they hit those 2 highways and they come down to the bottom of Inishowen, to Inch Lake, and they'll spend maybe a week or two there feeding up on the good grass, and then they'll pass down into other areas of Ireland or over into England. So it's like a motorway station early for them.
Stop off.
Yeah, stop off. Some will stay here, but most move on. And then it's the same again. Then in the spring, in another couple of weeks, they'll all start filtering through again, heading north. So it's, you get a lot of interest there. You get marsh harriers, loads of buzzards, peregrines.
Do you see lots of buzzards there? You probably spot them before me.
Yeah.
I feel like when I say, I'm excited, you know what I mean? But
we have golden eagle here as well, white-tailed eagles. There was a pair of white-tailed eagles the last 2 years, hanging around Inch Lake.
Didn't see them. I seen that. Did you see the black swans?
I have seen them.
I'm not going to say they're common, but I haven't seen them this year.
No, they're introduced, but they've done well. Yeah. So they're an Australian species, but they're doing okay.
They had
youngs,
chicks. I think they were black as well, weren't they?
Yeah, successfully.
So that is a type of swan.
That's a type of swan.
I wasn't sure if it was like a condition or not.
No, they're just their type of swan. That
interesting.
An individual had them as kind of pets, and then he released them, and they went to the lake where all the other swans are.
But by accident, or you said they're introduced?
I don't know if I think people get bored sometimes, they have a hobby and they
just let them loose.
Yeah.
And this is where they ended up.
Yeah.
That's mental. Yeah. Now, can they interbreed with the white swans? Are they the same kind of swan, or is there...
I don't think so. Not so far that I'm aware of.
Because they look identical.
Yeah. Not that I'm aware of. They're a kind of quirky addition, I suppose.
They definitely were a tourist attraction, they were.
People love to, feed the birds.
Something different too, like
things. But it is something different. I mean, there's loads of quite rare species here.
What else?
We've got a lot of guillemot species, a lot of even actual different types of seagulls that are quite rare now, black-headed gulls or black-backed gulls. And there's a whole niche scene of people who are interested in bird watching, and they'll often come to Inishowen to go bird watching, and they'll see so many species, or they want to tick them off their list or twitchers. So that's a little kind of segment of the population who visit here who are really interested in bird watching. It's not for everybody. It's quite a slow pursuit. Yeah, I'm kind of interested in birds, but I don't know sitting all day, Yeah, with a telescope or filming them and things like that. Yes, it's not for everyone. So there's different areas around the coast of Donegal and in Inishowen, in particular, we have these special protection areas. So they're European designations that are put in place to protect the home or foraging areas or habitats for bird species that are rare or endangered. So we've got quite a lot of them because we're on that outer edge of Europe. The birds that we have aren't that common throughout the whole of Europe. But we might say, there's 5,000 hooper swans there. But that could be 50% of the European population. Mm-hmm. So we kind of say, they're not endangered. There's loads of them here. But we might have a huge proportion of the European population. So there's kind of an onus on us to do something to make sure that the population doesn't fall or drop. It's good for wildlife here. It's not big cats, some people watch a lot of BBC or maybe go to Yellowstone and you expect to see wolves or bison, which is a huge successful conservation story because they were practically died out. And they basically brought them back from the brink, bison, and now they're doing so well they're having trouble with their neighbouring ranches. So it's human influence can be a positive story as well on some bird species. We have corncrake here in Donegal. They're not doing very well. They would have been associated with old kind of style of farming. And now they're subject to a lot of projects trying to bring them back from the brink, but they're kind of hovering on the local extinction. And it's very difficult to sell farmers a farming method or a way of farming that's gone 50 or 60 years ago. And you're saying, you really need to go back in time. Very difficult. That's a hard sell.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
It is. I actually had that conversation just recently about the farmers.
Yeah.
You sound like, you're a wealth of knowledge when it comes to nature and what you've done in your life. Like, what do you feel all of this has taught you,
Humility, I suppose, that I'm just passing through. Nature is there. It's enduring. It's long term. I'm just really a kind of a speck. I'm trying to enjoy life as much as I can and not make it any shitter than I found it when I came along. And just really trying to, I suppose, improve how we live on the earth, how humans interact with the world around us. What have I learned? I don't know. Yeah, that I don't know that much. Yeah,
because it can be. I suppose there can be an element of it's all doom and gloom.
Yeah,
and I don't know if I think that. Yeah, I mean, action needs to be taken, but still,
I don't. I think that's been a mistake that the environmental movement has made everybody feel guilty about living their lives. And I think that there's a lot of hope, certainly in Ireland. Our relationship with nature is much better than it was 100 years ago. Although people think the habitats and species are in worse condition, our approach to them, we're not as hungry. We have a little bit more wealth, we have a bit more space and ability now to reshape and make decisions about our future with nature. In this moment, I think it's this generation who's going to decide the next 50 or 100 years about how we interact with nature. And there's loads of hope. There's more trees. There's more action being taken now than there ever was. So I'm really positive, actually, about change and about the future. I think that we need to be careful about telling people not to do things all the time. And then nature becomes associated with being a restriction or something that stops people from living or making a euro or getting on with their lives in a comfortable way. And we need to provide solutions and outcomes that people want to have as opposed to are forced to have. And there's a difference between those things. And at the moment, we're still in the space of the scientists or the environmentalists standing on a soapbox, wagging their finger at people, telling them, you shouldn't be doing this and you shouldn't be doing that. And, when you were younger in school or with your parents, you didn't pay much heed to the person who's wagging their finger at you.
No.
But you did to someone who showed you something that was lovely or beautiful or a good experience. And you go, yeah, I value that. Or I think that's worthwhile because you were converted to something that was positive. But if someone's wagging their finger, don't do this, don't do that, the ears block, the eyes roll, and people just get on with their lives. So we have to find a way to break through to people and not make them feel guilty about living their lives. It's really important. I think it's been great chatting with you. Or to you. I don't know if you
it's a two-way conversation.
Yeah. No, it's good, and I think it's important. It's great that you're given nature and different people's perspectives on nature a kind of a platform and exposure. And I think that moving away from that traditional approach to nature and wildlife that's been kind of stuck in the kind of middle class, maybe stuffy RTE programs or BBC wildlife, to kind of platforms like this, it makes it more real for people. I'm a real person. It's a job that other people can get. Until you're exposed to it, young people need to be exposed to it and realize that it's something that's on their doorstep, it's attainable. They don't know about it and they think it's something that's only for an exclusive few, and it's not. It's our world as much as the scientists' world, as much as the rich people's world. So we need to kind of get up and get involved and do something about it if we want to make change.
Good. Thank you so much, Emmett. It's been a pleasure. Brilliant. I've really, really enjoyed having the conversation today, and I am please put me on the list to go see the sharks. Definitely, and the dolphins too.
Yeah. No, I mean it's. I say it's 30 minutes from here in a boat. It's up around the corner. If
people want to reach out to you, if they wanted to ask you questions or find out information, is that possible? Yeah,
I probably the best way. I can give you my email address. And then if they want to know more about the Basking Shark side of things, they can go to the baskingshark.ie, the Basking Shark Group website. Or more about national parks, then they can Google it. There's a national parks website as well, National Parks and Wildlife Service. I think it's mpws.ie. So those two websites will give you the basics. Or if they want to contact myself directly, we can put my email in the comments section.
Perfect. Good man, sir. Thank you so much, Emmett.
Brilliant.
Chat soon. Good stuff.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Cheers.